Welcome to the Bear Collective podcast, where we meet you at the edge of what you know and dance with you into the depths of what you don't in all things personal development, relationships, and lifestyle. We empower you to take what you need and leave what you don't. Thank you for listening, watching, and subscribing. Now let's get into today's episode, which is all about vulnerability, the V word.
The other V
The
word.
other V word. That's exactly what my thoughts went to.
I like your thinking.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be, if people can really grasp this concept as we did, and we went through this like years ago, I think this is really potent and powerful conversation that is really going to change relationships and the way that we operate with others.
Yeah.
And how we receive others as well.
Yeah, absolutely. How we show up. Yeah.
Really powerful.
Yeah, I love it. And so you've kind of, I'm going to say you've not pioneered this, but this is definitely more your thing where you like put things into like types and you've like nailed these 4 types of vulnerability or 4 ways of being vulnerable. Is there a different way that you would word that?
No, I think it just really breaks it down.
Yeah.
And I'll say that I didn't pioneer it. It's definitely out there. I've definitely brought it into my business. It's a pivotal part of my coaching. It's a pivotal part of my relationships and friendships that I've had conversations with, and it's really strengthened them. But actually breaking down vulnerability into these kind of 4 categories, it really just paints the picture for how you can communicate with people, how you're doing vulnerability and how you're receiving vulnerability from a healthy lens and from an unhealthy lens. So it just gives us language and context to communication.
To talk about it. Yeah.
Can we start with the first one?
Go for it. Hit it.
All right. So the first one is receiving emotional dumping.
Now, what is emotional dumping? Let's explain that.
I'll give 3 examples and then we'll kind of talk more to that.
Yeah.
But so receiving emotional dumping from somebody. So you're in a conversation with someone and it feels heavy. It feels draining. It feels toxic. It's where you're being like talked at rather than being talked with.
Yes.
Right. Another way to look at it is the person is talking all about the external things. So it's the blame and the judgment that they're placing very externally to them. And it lacks vulnerability. It remains quite surface level. And again, just very externally focused.
Yeah.
So I think an easy example to kind of go to is we've all got friends who go through breakups, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's that whole, they come in with the conversation and it just feels very dumpy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think even like, people in relationships do this as well, where they just come and like rag on their partner for like, most of a coffee date or something like that. Like that's where my head goes. And I feel like it was very like reminiscent of my 20s. It was just like bag out sessions, emotional dumping sessions. Without taking any responsibility.
Yeah, it's not internally focused at all. It's not kind of looking at yourself. It's just it's venting.
Yes.
Right. And there is a time and a space where you need venting. But we'll get to that when we look at the flip side of the coin.
Yes.
Because there is a time, we're not saying do not, share with somebody. It's just in the way that you do share.
Absolutely.
And when you're simply sitting there having a conversation where you are ratting out your partner and it's just, it doesn't feel clean to, give or receive. It feels very, very heavy. And it doesn't feel like there's any progress being made.
Yeah, it's where you kind of sit with those conversations and, we've all got that one friend and they just come back to you with the same issue time and time again. And you feel like every conversation is the same. Yes.
Without change.
Yes.
And that, like, can we just talk to if you think of your energy as a cup, when you go into having these conversations with people, if you want to know how to clean up energy, this is such a good space because sitting and receiving that from somebody, it actually drains your cup, even though it may not be your problem. You're your issue, you simply being in the space of receiving that dumping, it absolutely drains your cup. So when you are somebody who, you know, has like a desire for wanting more energy to do more things in life, or even just to do the basic things of like exercise and looking after your health and doing the housework or whatever it might be, and you're thinking, oh, I feel so tired and I feel so energetically drained.
Yeah.
This is part of the reason why.
Yes. Yeah. What are you taking on from the people around you?
Yeah.
Or even if you're that person who is emotionally dumping, you know, how are you spending your energy? Oh, that's not this one.
We'll get to
Pause.
We'll get to that.
Yes.
So just receiving emotional dumping, just sit with that for a minute. Like sit consciously in your conversations and just just bring it into your own awareness of, how does this feel? How is this conversation feeling for me? Even though it's not about making it about you, but it's making it about you because you're in control of yourself, right?
Yeah.
And you get to decide the types of conversations that you have, the time and the energy and the space that you are giving. Shall we move on to?
Let's do it. So
the flip side of the coin, which is receiving
empowered vulnerability. Yes. And it's all about like talking about emotions and feelings that are present. So it's being very open and vulnerable and honest about those feelings specifically. So it's almost like turning to the internal, isn't it? Like what's happening for me?
Yeah, it's very present. Yeah, very present moment.
Yes. And that's where someone's like, if you're receiving this, it's where you are like someone's opening up to you versus that dumping on you that we talked about just prior. Yeah, so I love this kind. And it's also like it can be focused on a specific thing, and the more they talk, they're opening out deeper about that thing. So it's really getting deep with yourself and someone else.
Yeah, and being specific about what it is that the challenge or the problem that you are facing.
Yeah.
Because often when we're in the flip side of it, where we're in the emotional dumping, the conversation's kind of going everywhere. It becomes a bit overwhelming. It's talking about like all the things and it's going to the past. And so being empowered, receiving empowered vulnerability is very present. It's not jumping to the past, to the future, to now, to just everywhere in like kind of complete chaos.
Yeah.
It is very kind of specific, it's intentional, it's focused on the problem, and you actually feel like you're connecting deeper with the person.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because like they're opening up to you that little bit more and showing you parts of themselves that, you know, they aren't when they're emotionally dumping.
Yeah, so very internally focused, where it's not that they can't talk about their partner, but it's talking about how you feel and how you're showing up and what feels right for you.
Yes.
You know, inside of that conversation as well, because it might be revealing a red flag.
Yeah.
Within yourself or within the other person that you need to consider and make a decision on.
Absolutely. And so if you went back to that example of like, you know, someone who's just gone through a breakup or is going through a breakup, how might that person come at a conversation? Like what might that sound like if you are like receiving that vulnerably?
It feels clean and it feels light to receive. You're able to hold space for that person because they're internally focused and not blaming everyone else and shifting into all this overwhelm. You can hear them taking responsibility and reflecting in the moment. It's actually coming up cleaner, which kind of goes more into
a bit later,
one of our conversations, one of our parts of vulnerability. But when you receive it, you feel like you're connecting more
with that person.
Yeah, that's what I'll say. It actually feels healthy. It feels light to receive, even though the topic might be a breakup, which, you know, is heartbreaking and you feel for the person and, you know, you love and you care for that person and you want to help them, but you're able to just separate and hold space and allow them to process, and you can see them processing in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can imagine that it also ties into, you know, seeking support and seeking help and having, you know, being really aware of the type of help that person wants you to offer if you're the receiver, you know, versus you sitting there going, oh, do I have to help this person fix it again if they're emotionally dumping? Or do I have to listen to this again if they're emotionally dumping? You know, if they're coming at you and you're receiving empowered vulnerability, I can imagine you're sitting there and you're thinking, okay, this person's really like aware of what they need and they're asking me for exactly what they need. And that feels really clean for me because now I know how to respond to this person in the way that's going to help them.
Yeah, there's a lot of emotional intelligence and a lot of emotional maturity around it. And the reason why it feels clean and feels healthy is because someone is taking responsibility. They're allowing you to see parts of themselves that, you know, can feel, you know, awkward or icky, or they have to admit something about themselves or their responsibility within the relationship, within the dynamic, or something that is not aligned for them. And it feels a bit like they're exposing, which is the part that actually connects you deeper.
Because most of us will sit there and go, I've done that.
Yeah, I've done that. Me too. I've felt that. I've been through that, right?
Yes.
And so that's where it can be, it becomes the connection and it strengthens and deepens your relationship. It goes beyond the surface. Again, the surface is just where it feels chaotic. It feels like it's going all over the place. It's bringing up parts from the past. It might be bringing other people or situations, and it feels very unstructured in another way. That's the way to put it.
Yeah. Or even dull. I always think of it as like quite dull because it's like, well, there's nothing new here.
Yeah.
You know, whereas we're all evolving all the time.
Yeah.
And so it's really nice to know the new things.
Yeah.
And see new sides and new parts of people.
Yeah. Well, that's what creates a relationship over time that's going to last the test of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And have someone truly know your authentic self.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that incorporates all the things.
All the things.
Not just the surface level stuff that we want to put out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, number 3.
Doing emotional dumping.
Yes. Oh.
So this is where we start the internal. So being able to really check in with yourself when you're listening to this one. So it's where you are blaming others. You're blaming that external world and you're focusing on other people's behavior only. Hits deep, doesn't it?
Yes. And then like my head just goes like ping, like of these conversations, you know, that you have over the years. Yeah.
Until you learn to clean it up.
Until you learn to clean it up. And I was here, you've been here.
Yeah.
I probably still dip into this like at times.
Absolutely.
It's good to be aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've had these conversations together, you know, and it's strengthened our friendship rather than tear us apart. But it's also where when you're doing emotional dumping, you're not in a space to actually accept, hear, or observe where you can take responsibility or reflect on or be aware of your own feelings and your own behavior. So it's just so externally focused that you can't see your role in it. Yeah.
And I think I want to pop here, if I may, like there are there are so many reasons why people do this that they may or may not be aware of. Like I think it's part of our like conditioning.
Absolutely.
If we go to that word. And there's also a huge fear around going internally for some people, because then it's like actually having to sit with, notice, relate to those deeper feelings that are coming up, or even just, you know, admitting to yourself the role that you're playing in the situation. And that can be really, really hard.
Absolutely.
So I do see a lot of fear behind emotional dumping.
Yeah, because you are looking, the reason why we often just sit and face externally, because it's easier sometimes to see in other people what we don't want to see in ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah, because it can bring about shame. It can bring it because you're looking at parts which you're uncomfortable within your own personality, the way that you're portraying yourself that aren't working for you. And I know a term that was kind of coined in the last couple of years that people will be familiar with is like your toxic traits, you know, and seeing that kind of stuff within yourself can be very uncomfortable. But you know, we'll have a conversation about that, but it's actually moving into acceptance of those parts and loving them and not shaming them.
Yes.
is the way to move through them versus denying that they exist or trying to not talk about them and suppress them. But just to add one more to the doing emotional dumping, and there's a lot deeper context and examples to these, but we're just highlighting, you know, some of the examples just to give you context. Doing emotional dumping, you're also not conscious of someone else's time or energy or bandwidth to receive.
Oh, I love
this
that.
is huge.
Yeah, that like hits me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, especially I think even as a therapist, like the amount of clients who don't see how they're impacting your own energy and time as a therapist. You've got the many who do, but you know, the ones who see the clock and know they're taking up the time of the next person's appointment and what that's going to do for you as a therapist later. I think so many therapists out there can relate to this one. I talk about it with colleagues all the time. Yeah, it's just such a big topic, really.
Yeah, and I've found that as well myself within my business, within coaching. There is a space for that kind of like within the first sessions where we're actually, you know, learning about what's going on for the client. But this is where learning and mastering the skill of empowered vulnerability versus the emotional dumping to receive it and to do it in both aspects. This is where the self-mastery, the emotional intelligence strengthens, your emotional resilience strengthens, your connection to people strengthens, the quality of like how you're received as a person, as an individual, how you're respected, how you're trusted, because you are valuing someone else's time and space and energy, and your level of communication just elevates when you really focus on this.
Yeah, absolutely. When you do this next one.
Yeah, just to sit with you're not conscious of someone's time or energy or emotional bandwidth. It's really about asking if you do have something going on for you. And I mean, both of us have had some stuff going on in the past couple of months, and it's actually asking the question up front that we've brought into our friendship, and I've brought into other relationships as well, is do you have actually space to receive this and sit with this? Or, you know, I need to talk about XYZ. Do you have space and time? And this is where cultivating and not relying on like one person or one best friend or just your partner, and having, you know, a good kind of 2 to 3 people to go to so that there is somebody there that has bandwidth to help you.
Yeah, to receive it.
To receive it. Versus just relying and expecting and dumping on that person, venting only to that person, and how you're actually impacting them as well.
Yes.
With their time and their energy.
Yeah. So I would say to people, if you're someone who's noticed like someone pull away from you, or you know that you're maybe losing friendships or friendships are changing, take a look at this. Like, is this something you are doing? Are you emotionally dumping on those people and they've actually needed to pull away? Because
it just feels heavy, and it feels like you don't value their time, or it's just that, if I spend time, I know it's going to go into this. And again, there's a way to do empowered vulnerability, which is
so taking courage, which can feel scary. It's where we get deeper to the core of an issue or a problem.
So going really
internal. And like it feels a lot healthier after you've done it. You will likely notice that there is like, you know, you're clearer, you've got more clarity, and you'll probably notice there is that deeper connection that we've been speaking to between you and that other person that you've actually let in.
And I actually love this one. It brings up a lot for me when I first kind of went into really observing myself and how I showed up in relationships and conversations, and how I was doing emotional dumping, and I wasn't actually getting clearer or that clarity. And then when you actually make the shift to start having those conversations where it does feel uncomfortable, you do fear, or can have that fear of, you know, the person might reject you for the kind of conversation that you need to bring up, or the uncomfortableness of of what you need to say, even within your friendship. You can fear rejection, you can fear abandonment from that person, you can fear that they might judge you.
Yeah.
And the way that I really like to describe this to my clients is it's almost when you have that courage and that fear, you have no control of the outcome.
Yeah.
Which makes you want to like vomit a little bit. Like it's that kind of like, that's how you know you're at the level versus being on the surface of, you know, I'm just sharing, yeah, I made a mistake. We're all sometimes comfortable to own mistakes.
Yes.
But, you know, actually doing empowered vulnerability, you have no control of the outcome. And can I just say that when I really got into this space, I realized on reflection, there are about 5 people that I needed to have conversations with.
Yeah. That
I hadn't. And it felt like this was sitting in the back of my unconscious mind. It was heavy energy that I had, you know, just held within the relationship that I wasn't aware of, that through learning this, I became aware of. And I was like, oh no, I need to have these conversations. And I had to build up the courage.
Yeah.
And I did fear losing some of those friendships or the dynamics shifting and changing. And every single one of those conversations, my relationship with that person got stronger.
Yeah.
And they were actually thankful that I brought that kind of conversation to the table. Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, the biggest thing around it, like, was the fear, big time. And like, just having to learn to sit with myself and like love myself regardless of the outcome.
Yeah.
And just be like, well, if I lose a person, I lose a person. Like that is so fine. I'm still here for me. I'm standing true to my values, what I believe in. I'm going to do it anyway. Yeah,
I think that's such a great point, because there is, you know, there are a lot of cliche sayings out there, but it does become true that, you know, if you do lose a friendship or a relationship out of that, you didn't actually lose. You actually created space to fill in what is more aligned for you. And I think sometimes what it is it's that void or the gap of what that person meant or the space that they filled.
Yeah.
But as you can see from this conversation, if it was kind of one that was draining you and actually feeling unhealthy and unproductive, is the conversation actually productive, getting clarity, leading you somewhere, leading to that growth and that next evolution of yourself? Or is it the opposite? You know, and if it's the opposite and that person leaves, it's actually a gift. Yeah. Because it's creating space for you to fill it with people and relationships that are more aligned. And as we become more vulnerable and evolve, we are going to essentially, make that space. But people that we love now are not going to be able to come with us every time. Yeah. They might not be able to do the same thing for whatever reason. And that's okay. Yeah. Agreed. And can I just say that when you start to do this, the energy that you have for life shifts. And sometimes when we're feeling tired, I want you to ask yourself, what is the conversation that I'm avoiding having? Oh my goodness. Do you know how many clients come in and they're like, so we've got this thing. And I basically look at them now and I say, so what have we got to do? And they're like, yeah, I've got to address it. Because so many people just put it off and like almost wait to be told that they need to have the conversation. But yeah, if you can pick up on that on your own early, and really just get ahead and rip off the band-aid, to use another saying, have the conversation. Yeah, because otherwise you're sitting in rumination. The procrastination of, I know I need to have that, but sitting in the avoidance, the procrastination, the rumination, that is consuming time and energy. Your most valuable assets in life. That you have, that you like master it, people. That's all we got. Yeah. That's all we got. Yeah. So you can continue sitting with the dumping and do nothing. Yeah. And wonder why you're tired and wonder why you feel like you can't do X, Y, Z because, you know, you feel so tired all the time or overwhelmed or you're carrying around this energy, this kind of low frequency energy. Clean it up. Clean it up. This is one of the biggest ways and most powerful ways to clean up your energy. And when I've taught this and gone through this concept with clients and they've started implementing that, like literally you can see the shift in their body, in their face. Like they literally
get more of a glow, would you
yeah,
say? Yeah, I would get
This is
it's a vitality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is definitely an episode where I think listen to this again, watch this again, really
take notes.
Yeah. If you can really understand this concept and implement it in your life. And the first place to start is by listening a few times over and really grasping the 4 areas.
Yes.
And then just sitting in awareness, noticing and observing your conversations. Yeah. And then start having those uncomfortable conversations. I think maybe just to add, to if you're receiving emotional dumping from somebody, something that you can ask them is, does this feel healthy for you? Does this feel productive for you?
Yes.
Productive for you? And how do you want to move through this? What's your next step?
Yeah, just as really a starting point for that person to help them, I suppose, to see it.
And it is also okay to say, can we take a pause? This is actually feeling really heavy for me to receive this. How does it feel for you?
Yes.
And it just gets them to clock in the moment, oh, this does feel potentially like heavier. I'm not getting any.
And you're role modeling being emotionally vulnerable.
Yeah. And emotionally mature.
So that's a double win. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, team. Thank you for watching, listening, and subscribing. Happy note taking.
This is definitely, a very powerful episode.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing how you all change your lives through this one.
We'll see you again soon.
See you next time.
Bye.